Welcome. We're glad you're joining us tonight, and we are live. And so, as always, do ask questions, throw your comments in. We will field it all. Bring it on. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Tonight, this is the third episode or series or version of resolving identity crisis. And we'll be talking about role and my role. And I posed it as a question on the title, "What is my role?" I had a chance today because I'm sorry.
I don't see a question.
It's in the title. What's my
Oh,
role?
in the
Yeah,
title.
but it's not supposed to be a statement.
I
It's
thought you
supposed to be a
meant
question.
down there.
Yeah. No. So, and so I'm gonna pose this as a question to the audience. How do you determine what your role in life is? And honestly, I hope, because I know that there are people who believe and are Christians listening. There are people from our church listening, but my hope is that you don't answer this from the mindset of being religious. How do you determine things like, what's my career? What's my who do I marry? You know what I mean? Like, am I even supposed to get married? What's my role in life? And from where you are right now, you can either look at how you determined where you are, how you got to where you are, or you can say, this is what I'm doing to get to where I want to go. And the reason why I say it that way is I work at Stanford University, and I have kind of a unique opportunity now because school's now started. This is actually last week was the first week of school. Actually, I think last week was move-in week, and this week is like official school start. So yesterday was like the first day of academics, and students are like everywhere. It's actually kind of uncomfortable sometimes because I'm driving a huge truck and these students are literally everywhere, bikes flashing and flying, and it's a mess. It's crazy. But I've gotten to work in the student rooms, and I've had a couple really cool conversations with some of these students, and a couple of the conversations, specifically today, and not because I knew what we were doing in the podcast, but I was curious, to get the mindset of some of these young, between 18 and probably 24-year-old, kids who are going to a very prestigious college or university, and they are they're thinking about their lives and where they're going to end up, and all these plans and stuff are kicking in. And so I asked one guy today, I said, so, he's a junior at Stanford, and I said, what's your major, and what are you planning on doing? And he starts explaining this to me, and I just said, I'm curious, man, if you don't mind me asking, what's your goal? Like, what is your goal? What's the goal here? And he goes, well, I don't know. The goal is to make a lot of money. And he's a junior. Yeah. And he's to be fair, he's at least got a path, and he knows his career category that he wants to get in. And I'm not going to say it, but when he told me, I was like, what in the world would drive a 23-year-old to go and do that?
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't even sound interesting, let alone something you can sustain over a long period of time. It's just money. And so I talked to another student, and they said, this is my first year of university, and I want to be a math major. And I was like, a math major? So you want to teach? And she goes, probably not academia, but I just want to know how to think, and I think this is a good way to get my foot in the door. And I was like, that's very interesting. So I'm talking to these students that are, just to try and think of like a metaphor to explain this, how it's going in my mind anyway, is it's like they have the greatest bow and the sharpest, straightest arrow, and they've got such potential with this shot, but they just go like this.
Yeah.
I think that's the right direction. And so it's like there's no clear direction for what they're supposed to be doing. It's kind of whatever happens,
Yeah.
And so, that can go really good, or it can also go really, really disappointing later down in life. So it brings, more emphasis on the question, what is my role? Yeah. And so let's just talk about that a little bit. I'm going to pose the question to you, and then I'll type the question in, and we'll get to it. And I have to give my talking points right away so that we understand where we're going for time's sake. I want to first talk about the individual. Then I want to talk about just real briefly, because we've already touched a lot on this, is God made man and woman different. Why? And then I want to talk about what we'll refer to as godly institutions, because God gave some institutions. These aren't man-made institutions that actually help guide our role in life, and there are 5 of them. So we have to get through that 5, and then the first 2 questions. So that's 7 total. So now you know our time frame.
Okay.
Now, to be fair, if we didn't get through all the institutions, you guys ask questions and stuff like that, I can work these into another idea. But they are super important to talk about, and so I'll prioritize them as we get to them. Okay, so the question for you tonight first is talking about the individual. What is God's intention for man? Again, we touched on some of these in the very first podcast talking about Genesis, but God made man, put him in the garden, and he said, tend it and keep it. And then he said, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth, and have dominion over it. So there are like these 3 different categories. How does that play out in like the modern day? What is God's intention for man now?
What is God's intention for man now?
Like if a man were to ask God,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
One of these university
Yeah.
students were to say, what should I do? I have an opportunity at this massive university.
Well, it's interesting, because you as you were talking about this, I was thinking, wait a minute, do I, am I thinking far enough down the road to, be able to actually join this conversation, or am I too short-sighted on things, or am I just as bad as these university students? Because it's like, what do I do after I get to heaven? What's the plan after that? It's like, I don't have any idea. It's like I don't. But it's because the answer to your question is that we're to serve God. That's the whole idea. This is training. This life is training for the next life. It's not an end in itself. And that's a hard thing for us to grasp, is that idea, because we think this is it, that this is life, we call it life, and we think this is it, it's life. But it's not, it's training for life, in the true sense of the term, because real life is eternal, it's eternal life. And so our purpose in this life is to be training, for the next life, is probably the best way to summarize it.
Okay, so I pitched this question out to the listener. How should a person determine their role in life? That's hopefully that's clear enough. But and so get your answers in quickly so we can process them in and keep going. But okay, so now thinking about the differences between man and woman. So God clearly made man different than woman, and woman different from man.
We talked about that last week, didn't we?
We did, but more from the standpoint of like us not trying to force these, definitions on it, right?
Yeah.
But again, now getting the clarity on it, because and I'll talk about the reason why I'm actually asking that question is specific to a statement you made in the last couple of actually I think it was the first 2 weeks ago, and we have a Sunday morning men's meeting, and you had mentioned men are meant to lead.
Yeah.
And so clearly there is a role definition there.
Yeah.
And so how,
Well, that's a smaller.
Okay, now I'm not specifically talking about leadership, but I'm just talking about there's clearly things that are expectations of the gender.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
and obviously there are nuances throughout the Bible. You read about things that were circumstantial but curious, can we answer the question? What is the role differences? Can they be that clear?
Yeah, if we're going after sort of general idea, it's funny because our world is like so lost, in when it comes to the basics. I mean, just the absolute basics of existence. Women carry children. That's what they do. They carry children. They get pregnant and they carry children. Men can't do that. They can't get pregnant and carry children. It's just not physically possible. And so there's a role definition there by birth, from
Yeah.
birth. There's a definition. It's not, because God said to Adam and Eve to be fruitful. So that was the having children is a significant part of being alive. And there's been all kinds of, blowback because of the cat lady remark by
Yeah.
Vance, and the reason why there's so much blowback is because the truth hurts. Is that really is the issue? Is these are people that, rather than having children and raising families, have chosen not to in order to be able to wield power. And that's really, what's happened. But the problem with that is you're not leaving anything behind. You're there's no legacy in that. And
Let me interject a question here. I was thinking about this last week and we didn't really touch on it, but like, how come it's hard for, us as people to see how genuinely unique each one of those roles is in and of themselves?
I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that. It's really hard to do that. It's the fact that there's this invisible momentum in the world that is anti-female. It's anti-female, and I think these record smashing non-binary competitors should be a wake up call, to how far we've gone the wrong direction
Yeah.
when it comes to all this, because it is, eventually, if things just keep going this way, it's going to be the non-binary, and I use that in quotes, who are going to hold all the women's records. There will be no women holding women's records unless it is for the record of being something that is specifically feminine, But if there's any kind of competitive element to it, every record's gonna be held by somebody who is nine-buried, because they are a male in physical body, and by definition, like we talked about last week.
Yeah.
It doesn't. They don't. To train to be better athletically, for a man it's against a woman is not. It's easier, and but who men are not suffering because of this. That's the whole non-binary people are not replacing males, but they are replacing females. And we obviously can't 100% replace, those that identify as females, because they're the ones having the kids. Mm-hmm. But that's the answer to the imbalance, is being able to have kids.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, there's if women stop having kids, then there's only going to be non-binary people, and then everybody's going to be dead. Mm-hmm. Well, there'll be men and non-binary people, and then everybody will die. It's like that's just the way things are going to go. And they say, oh, that's silly, it's going to be, men, women, non-binary, everybody, because it's all social construct, all that, all the thinking. But the bottom line is that there'll be no role, for women. What will be their role? Their role will be to try to figure out how to compete against men and non-binary. And that's not how you find a role. And so like I said, this is, it's demonic, to be honest. It's inspired from hell, against women, and using women against themselves. Which, that's the thing to me that's the so tragic about it, is because in the mind of what I would call a balanced male is, he's happy that there are, feminine, that there are females. Not, when I say feminine, I don't mean, play with dolls,
Right.
Have curly hair.
That's what we talked quite a bit
Yeah.
about last week. Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole idea of being a woman, what is a woman? I've never heard anybody ask the question, what is a man? Nobody will have a problem answering that. The reason why they have a problem answering what is a woman is because there's pressure to not identify a woman.
Mm-hmm.
That's where all this is going. But like I said, I really do believe it's demonic. It's the the Bible talks about the woman as the weaker vessel, and which is, that gets you all kinds of, hornets flying around just saying that. But it's like they are, by birth, they're the weaker vessel. They're not, but that doesn't mean they're inferior, it just means they're weaker. And strength is not everything. And that's a,
Physical strength you're talking about.
yeah, physical strength is not everything, or even mental strength, corporate CEO style, high, 16 cylinder isn't everything, that's none of that is everything. And so, the fact that, all this complaining about how men get paid more and, all the idea of, prejudice against women and stuff like that. If you really take a step back from all that and you think about it just for a minute, you realize that as a woman, unless you're a cat lady, you're going to want to get married and have a family, and so it doesn't matter how much money you make, that's irrelevant. What matters is how much money your husband makes, so that he can take care of the family, so that you can have a family, so that you can raise children. There's a saying behind, every great man is a great woman. Mm-hmm. And the truth that's true not just husband to wife, but mother to son.
Yeah.
Is there's so much benefit for a woman to be family oriented in terms of fulfillment in life. That as a I'm glad that I was able, a lot of my life, a lot of my life as a dad, to be able to own my own business and to work my own hours, because I had plenty of time to be with my family, and we were doing stuff together, we're pastoring the church, and, very fulfilling life that I would have never wanted to trade for a corporate career. Yeah. Never in a million years would I have wanted to trade for that. I wouldn't want to be a CEO of some big company or something like that, and having pots of money is not, that's not fulfillment. Those things are not fulfillment. And, you're talking about this guy who says he wants to make a lot of money. Yeah, well, how long do you want to work at that? That's the real question. Do you want to work at that until you die?
Yeah.
You want to make a lot of money all the way up until you die, like my father-in-law did? Hardly spent any money at all, had millions of dollars, stored up, and yet when he, when it came to, lunch, he'd use a coupon, and it's like, and I'm not faulting him for being, frugal, but there were things that he didn't do because it was expensive,
yeah.
To do, and it was like, at what point do you stop saying that? At what point do you stop, counting your money,
Yeah.
And so when it comes to life, it's funny to me, because it's like there's just this like such a narrow idea. It's funny, we're talking about all this diversity and stuff, and how to be trying to be open-minded, that there isn't just two genders and all this kind of stuff. But the problem is in the process of all this, awareness, that's going on, we're oblivious to just about everything. So it's like that's why I say that it's demonic, because that's one of the things that I've seen over the years of being a Christian, is that what the devil is great at is making people think they know something, mm-hmm. when they don't. That's his big. That's one of his probably, in my experience, I would say that's probably his favorite weapon against mankind. I think maybe even just out of pure delight, of just looking at people and thinking, you think you are so smart, but you are so stupid.
I mean, he's enjoying the
yes,
view.
he's enjoying looking at these people,
Yeah.
who think they're smart, but they're not. They're actually stupid. And because they believe things and they think things and they think they're progressive and with it and modern and intelligent and all these I'm hip, I'm in, and then they're just the worst ever, as far as, being in good shape. They're the worst shape that a human being could ever be in. It always comes back. It's, I think about these things and I always think about the whole emperor's new clothes thing.
Yeah.
Is that I just see that over and over and over again when it comes to these kinds of things. Is the emperor, he's, isn't that the great? I don't want anybody to think I don't, I can't see anything here, but I don't want anybody to know that because I don't want anybody to think I'm stupid, And it's like, you are stupid,
Yeah.
It's not that we don't need to worry about what people think. You are, you're playing the game, and so therefore you're stupid. And that's the thing, the whole idea that, if women are only equal when they make the same kind of salaries that men do, women are only equal when they are able to take on the same kinds of jobs as men do. That whole idea is just stupid.
Yeah.
It's a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Because it's even in the Christian realm, because the Bible's very clear about, here's another hornet's nest to kick about women pastoring. And the Bible's very clear that women are not to be teachers over men, just as simple as that. And all the fighting over that I've got something to say, and I shouldn't be suppressed, and and all that kind of thinking. It's like, God made you the way you are. Why are you fighting against this?
Mm-hmm.
Stop and ask yourself the question, why are you fighting against this? Why is this so important? Why is this such a big deal that you have to preach? Why is that such a big deal to you? Don't give me this because God called me. Don't give me this because, I just feel inspired. I feel the Holy Spirit. Don't give me any of that. Give me the truth.
Yeah.
What is it that inspires you? You feel inferior. And you're looking for an opportunity to be able to feel superior. You want to get to a place to where you feel good about yourself, and being a mom and taking care of kids and a household and having building a life for a family. It's funny, it's because there are these Proverbs 31 ministries that are run by women that are not Proverbs 31 women.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's hilarious, but they're running, and we need to be like that and stuff like that. And they say, see, she worked, and it's like, okay, you got one attribute, but you're missing all the other ones.
So this is clearly a problem in the church as well as in the world. It's not,
it is.
It's not unique to the rest of the world.
Because it's all when it's all said and done, it's because it's so narrow, it's so short-sighted and so narrow-minded in thinking, because you are not thinking about eternity at all when you're fighting over these kinds of things. You're not thinking about eternity when you're thinking about women should have their place in this and that and the other thing and the other thing and the other thing and the other thing. And it's like, yeah, but what about when it's all gone? What about when it's all over and we're in eternity? When God's rule is supreme and there is no playing games with it, then what? So you've spent your entire life, you were supposed to be something else, but you spent your entire life trying to be a male mover and shaker in a female body. And now you're in heaven. You've got no rewards. If you've made it to heaven, you've got no rewards. You've got no responsibility. You've got no destiny in terms of what you did on earth is going to somehow translate into, a well done, thou good and faithful servant in heaven. That's not going to happen. Now what? How is that any different than being a drug addict?
Yeah.
When it comes right down to it, how is that any different from being, keeping things in context? How is that any different than somebody who just goes to church on, Christmas and Easter?
Yeah.
How's that any different? If you're chasing after all these carnal, worldly, acceptable paths, what are you going to do when you stand before God and God says, there's a guy named John Bevere. He had a great, he was talking about, a man standing before God, and God called him to be a pastor, but he wanted to become an accountant. And so he said, give an account for your pastoring. And he goes, oh, I wasn't a pastor. I was an accountant. He said, yes, but I called you to be a pastor. Give me account of your pastorate. And he's like, I don't have one. Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. You've done nothing, no rewards. And then another guy comes up, and he's a pastor, and he's been all over the world, and he's done all kinds of stuff. And God says, I called you to be an accountant. Give account of your accountancy. And he says, no, you don't understand all the preaching that I've done and all the great things that I've done, all the people that came to you because of me. I called you to be an accountant. Give account of your accountancy.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter. Whatever God created you for, if you're not doing that, you're going to give an account for it anyway, even if you're not doing it.
Yeah.
He's going to say, give an account of what I created you to be. He's not going to say, give me an account of what you felt was cool, or what you felt was more needful. You know my kingdom better than I do. I don't need anybody. Oh, no, you needed me. You don't understand. You needed me. Because without me, you wouldn't have been able to achieve half the things that you achieved. It's like, no, sorry, it doesn't work like that.
This goes back to your about the devil making us think something.
Yeah. Exactly.
So a couple answers come in that are actually very relevant. The first one is more specific to the gender side of things. And so the question is, how should a person determine their role in life? That's actually kind of an interesting answer. Acknowledge the gender you were born with, and acknowledging what's morally proper and not proper for your gender.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. The difficulty with that is the definition of gender, which it's very, you're talking about your, what you see in the mirror.
Yeah.
And that's when you're raised in church, you really do. I keep saying this, and it's like, I hate saying it because it's not like, it's not like you're hopeless if you were raised in church, but it's like, I'm so glad I wasn't, because I had a genuine opportunity to be able to live life without God, a godless life, where a godless life is a life where you just try to figure stuff out on your own. You're not, there are opportunities, there are more moral teachings, different things like that are floating around in the world, but it's not when you're not raised in a Christian or a religious home. There's no reference to God about anything. There's morality for morality's sake, which is a real big question. It's like, morality for morality's sake. What's the point of that? That's because morality is limiting. Morality isn't it's expanding. You don't become expanded by being moral. You become expanded, by being immoral. Because there's no limits on anything that you want to try. But when you're moral, you've got this, that, or the other thing. Until morality becomes, godly. And there's a difference between moral and godly. And so growing up and not having a real clarity, I do sympathize with people who are raised in godless homes when it comes to the issues of gender, because you have no references. What am I? Who am I? And especially through the teenage years, you need somebody to tell you who you are, until you get to a certain age where you can, accept that. You need somebody to tell you.
We'll touch on that a little bit more here in a second. Yeah, that's good.
And so that's so critical, so critical. But I didn't have that because I was surrounded from my parents to both sets of grandparents. There was no Christians in my existence. There just wasn't. And so, am I a homosexual? How do I know that I'm not? That was, when I was probably 18, 19 years old, that was a big question. How do you know if you're not a homosexual? It wasn't how do you know if you are, it's how do you know if you're not?
Yeah.
Just because I'm, intimate with girls, does that mean I'm not homosexual? Because it's, because the teaching, was that, you're born like this, and so how do you know until you actually you know, which was funny because that was the thing that friends of mine who were homosexuals were constantly saying, is you can only know by trying. And it's like, and I'm now as a Christian, having never actually tried, having a Christian, that's horrible advice. You know, that's horrible advice. To try something to find out whether or not you're it or not is a horrible way to. But that's what you do when you don't have a God.
Yeah.
You know, is you just try things and see how it works out. And so you try things and then you realize certain things. You know, and because it's like, you know, Adam and Eve eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You know, is now all of a sudden they have knowledge that they shouldn't have ever had because they don't have the capacity to be able to process it properly. And so that's true of sin, you know, in general, is that we are not, you know, God did not create us to be able to experiment with sin.
Yeah.
You know, experimenting with sin is always a disaster. It's not. It may work.
Yeah.
You know, maybe, but no. It will always cause danger or damage. It will always cause trouble. There'll never be a positive thing that comes out of sin because we cannot handle sin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't have the capacity to handle sin. And so, but when you're raised in a godless home like that, you know, you just try stuff because what is sin? You know, what's the definition of sin? There isn't any of those kinds of things. And so you just don't have any of that kind of stuff. But after becoming a Christian and realizing this is what's needed, you know, what's really needed is an understanding that who you are is who you are at birth. You know, that's who you are.
Yeah.
You know, who you are at birth, that's who you are. And you may have, because we live in a fallen world, you may have messy genes. You know, and you may have tendencies towards this thing or that thing or the other thing, but we're not just a bag of genes.
Yeah.
We have a brain.
Yeah.
You know, that can override even the greatest of tendencies. You know, they can override, and we're now beginning to find out that genes can actually be switched off, and switched on, and so we're not entirely bound, you know, by what we are at birth, you know, because a lot of that there's a plasticity to our existence, and so we don't have to do that. You know, it doesn't have to be the case. And there are many testimonies of people who were very deep into, you know, homosexuality and different kinds of confusing situations that got saved, became Christians, and then realized, you know, this is a lie. You know, and I shouldn't have been toying with this stuff because this is sin, and have been able to extract themselves from all of that.
Yeah.
And be a testimony to others to say, listen, I know where you're at, you know, but it's not what you think. It's not as dark as it seems.
So again, I'm gonna work that into one of our institutions here. That's actually perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so another answer that came in here, that's actually more circumstantial. For time's sake, you'll have to... actually, no, this is priority anyway, so like I said, I'll prioritize the institution. So the answer, though, is do you think determining your role could also be dependent on the cards you've been dealt? Example, a woman who is married but not able to have kids versus a wife or mom, versus a mom who has to work, etc., etc.
Yeah, so you have all kinds of different factors.
Yeah.
And yes, you have to play the hand that you're dealt. But the idea and the understanding is that there is more than just simply, you know, this resignation kind of approach to things. You know, that, oh, well, you know, because it all comes down to this idea of what you want to be. You know, no matter how you're looking at this, it's still you choosing your destiny, you know. And that's the problem is that, oh, well, I guess I won't be able to do this. Yeah, because you can't. Because maybe there's something else you're supposed to be doing, but you're so caught up in this idea of what you can't do that you're not going to take the time to do it. Yeah. You know, that's the thing is funny is that, you know, Oh, I really, really, really want to be able to do this, and so I'm going to work at it and work at it and work at it. And you spend your whole life working at it, but you could have done something else all during that period of
Yeah.
time that would have been just as fulfilling.
Yeah.
But you didn't want to do it because you wanted to do this, and you got all focused on some particular thing. And so it's not a resignation thing. It's I have a natural ability with IT, and I could have made loads of money and done all that stuff. And I had absolutely no natural ability when it came to pastoring, none whatsoever. And I don't know that anybody does, but that was, so for me, it was just going to be a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But I knew it's what God wanted me to do. So it was like, okay, a lot of hard work. And now I can say now, 30 years later, it was worth it. I'm glad I did it. I know, if I had gone the other way, because I still do IT projects. And it's like, the older that I get, the less excited I get about starting my next IT project. It used to be when I was younger, it's like, oh, I could be up all night long, playing with all this garbage. But as I'm getting older and I'm becoming, more aware of God's purpose for my life and deep, in minor details. It's not that I didn't know, but the minor details, and there's a picture and a puzzle, that's being built of my life, and there's more clarity to it. And the more that I see that, the less I really care, about my natural abilities, because I want more of what are not my natural abilities.
Yeah. So let's jump into this, the institutions. It's interesting because you mentioned that we have the ability to override certain tendencies.
Yeah.
And the truth is, overriding those tendencies is always going to be in the context of, at the end of the day, what does God think about this? I have this tendency,
Yeah.
but, is it right with God? Is it wrong with God? Is it going to,
Yeah.
where's it going to take me in the long run, right? And so these institutions really do help guide a lot of that. And we'll, they're not in a super specific order. I've kind of prioritized them just for time's sake. But thinking about, I'll just mention all 5 of them just so we can have them in, kind of on the table. The first one is the church.
Mm-hmm.
The second is marriage, and again, no particular order other than priority.
Mm-hmm.
And then work, which is something God instituted. Rest, which is something God instituted, and then governments and authority. And so, or you just say authority.
Yeah.
And so, but more specific to leadership, those over you. And all of those things help guide an individual's role. And it's very interesting. There's different ways that happens, but I'm curious now, given everything we're talking about, how does the church impact personal identity? How does it help? How does it guide? How does it, what is it in the church that does that?
It's a hard question to answer. Because the reason that it's a hard question to answer is because you have to first answer the question is God in the church?
Mm-hmm.
And until you answer that question, you can't really until you can answer that question, you don't really have an answer of can the church have influence, because the church isn't.
When you say you have to answer is God in the church, you talking about generally or a specific church?
I mean, God being the one who Jesus said,
Instituted
"I
the
will
church."
build
Right.
my church."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He didn't say you're going to build the church for me.
Yeah.
And so that really is the issue. Is if you're talking about your classic religion type of approach, no. In fact, probably the opposite. I would say that it probably has less help without having clear direction from God. If God is not actively involved in the church.
So this is very specific to a church. It's not just church in general.
Well, singularly, but not a church from the standpoint of a particular church, but a church from the standpoint of all of them, singularly.
Mm-hmm.
Is God involved? Are they applying? Because the help, the church's help, is directly related to the church's adherence to biblical principles.
Mm-hmm. So what would that look like? First time attender, coming into a church, how would they know if God's there or not?
How would they know if God is there or not from first walking through the door? Well, they wouldn't. Well, I mean, there are ways. I knew God was there, but there was a presence thing. It's hard to explain, but that's more subjective because that's more based on feeling. So you wouldn't really know, because I didn't know whether God was. It wasn't like, oh, God's here definitely. It was. I just knew the place was different. It wasn't like churches that I've been to before. That was the whole, the kind of the whole, thinking behind the whole idea of calling everything that we do not your ordinary church.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole idea, is that as a non-Christian, for me going into church, they were all the same. They were all the same. And when I say same, I mean they all had the same negative, hypocritical, pretentious, presence. Presence isn't the word that I want to use, but I can't think of another one. But just the general, walking into a church. When I was in Tucson, there walked probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 different churches over the years that I was invited to by friends, and all of them had different. They actually had different creeds, but they were all the same in terms of how they worked. And even I was invited into a Muslim temple and an est meeting, and they were all the same. It was all the same. There was nothing. It was all pretentious. It was all, fictitious. The only way I can describe it is pretending. Is the idea that there's something, but when there's not. And no, there's something, is there wasn't, and that's why I wasn't all that excited about going with my friend to his church, because it was like, been there, done that, which is what, I'm going to go to the same kind of place, and it's going to be the same as anything else I've experienced. But that wasn't the case, because it was the first time that I had gone to a church that was very Bible adherent. The whole idea of, focusing on the Bible. There was, it wasn't, I'm trying to summarize it real fast, but I just can't get anywhere with that idea. But the bottom line was, the whole thing was different. It was very genuine, very authentic. Everybody there, very genuine, very authentic, not pretentious, not pretending to be something, not plastic, not smiling with the bottom of their face. It wasn't that kind of stuff. It was genuine. There was just a genuineness about it that I'd never seen before. I mean, it wasn't just one person. It was, a good majority of people. I didn't meet everybody, of course, but it was, that was a first impression on me. And that's why I am the way that I am in pastoring, because I very much remember my first service, and I remember everything that came after that.
So, now establishing that, okay, God's in this place. What,
well, absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
because it's the Bible. That's the issue. The Bible is what changes us, and that's why people have such a problem with the Bible.
How does the Bible change us? How does it direct? We're talking
If
about
you live
identity.
it,
We're talking.
yeah.
About,
If you live it, then you're not confused.
Yeah.
You're not confused about things. You were born a male. You were born a female. You have thoughts in your mind that are weird and unusual, and well, welcome to reality. That's where we are. But that means you need to you need to discipline your mind. You need to, it's all kinds of, whatever is good, whatever is noble. If there's any, I'm the Philippians. I can't remember the exact how to quote it.
Holy, yeah.
Yeah, but think on these things. He says think on these things, and so there are. It's a hands-on book. It's not just, you're not just reading stuff. It's a hands-on. There's a you can conform your life around the Word of God, and when you start doing that, you just simply do that. I mean, that's the thing that's so interesting about it. You just simply start doing it, and it works. You say, I don't see how this is going to work. Or don't worry about that. Just do it, and you'll see. Mm-hmm. You just start living it, and you see it works. It works. Yeah, but it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, because it's God. and you're not God, and that's why it doesn't make any sense. You're doing something that God tells us to do, and by doing what God tells us to do, you prosper. You're the one. We call it blessed, but that's the idea. Is you're the one who benefits, from doing those things, and if you hang around long enough, and you are willing to be very risk taking and very challenged, then you will find that even things that you are quite confident aren't going to work out the way that the Bible says they do. And that's that's where you begin to develop a growing faith, is because you begin to realize, even though I don't get this works, and it gives you confidence that you can trust in the Word of God.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about marriage. What does, it's interesting to ask a question about marriage, really, because, there are so many opinions about marriage in today's world, which again is one of the reasons why it's important to talk about, because God is the one that instituted marriage. And so,
well, that is a big deal, because marriage without God is not marriage, with God. It's not the same at all. There's nowhere near the same. That's why there's so much divorce. And that's why even Christians get divorced, is because it's marriage with God, and again, it comes back to that biblical thing.
does God intend for every person to get married?
Does God intend for every person to get married? That's an interesting question, because I would say the vast majority of people, yes. The relative few, there's reasons, there's reasons why it's beneficial. But I've just, like I said, I've said it many times over the years. There's a lot of people who caught onto this weird idea that somehow you're more spiritual by being single, just by definition, but you're not. You're not more spiritual by being single, and if you're, it's a misreading of different scriptures in Matthew and in Corinthians that are not they're not applied properly in their context. If you're a lazy, good for nothing single person, you're not more spiritual than an industrious married person.
Right.
So it's not, you're not just more spiritual just simply because you're single.
What is God's intention through marriage?
Well, we have families, and that's a obviously major factor. You need to have kids. This is a no-brainer. You need to have kids. There's not enough money in the world to sustain everybody when we stop having kids. It's not, you're still looking at a good period of time before everybody's dead, if we just stop having kids.
Yeah.
And
but
who's
what
gonna?
What about like the middle? Like I'm interjecting.
It's only one. I mean, it's not
yeah.
everything.
Yeah, but like what what about like the the person that says, and I'm not saying that there's like a huge majority of people that say this at all, or even a large minority, but the people that say, well, that some people are meant to have kids. That's not for me.
Well, you're probably a cat lady.
We just lost.
Yeah. No.
See,
the truth is if you can't have kids, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
If you want to have kids and you can't have kids, that's a whole nother thing. But if you can have kids and you don't want kids, there's something up there. Sorry. There's something up there. Because you can, biblically speaking, having children is a very large part of being a woman. Mm-hmm. And there should be a natural desire to want to have that. And if you don't have that natural desire, then like I said, something's up. I would, if you're a Christian and that's how you feel about things, I would be praying and asking God, what's wrong with me, that I'm feeling this way? What's wrong with me that I'm, not wanting to fulfill, part of my role as a godly woman, you know. And it's not that you have to have 1,000,000 kids or anything like that. We had 3 kids, and we decided after 3 kids we weren't having any more kids. And my wife got sterilized. She got her tubes cut. And there's no issue there, you know. There's no problems. Oh no, you need to have 1,000,000 kids and this and that and the other thing. Well, have as many kids as you want. But the issue of family, you know, is such a major part of marriage. You know, it's not just 2 people. You know, I from time to time, and I know there's going to be trouble. You know, is that there'll be people who, you know, they get saved, they come into church, and you know, they meet somebody and they get married, and you know, of course, you know, all the ladies, you know, so you're going to have kids, and they're like, oh no, we think we want to wait like 5 or 10 years to have kids. I think, yeah, there's going to be trouble.
Yeah.
There's going to be trouble.
Does the same thing apply for men? Men should want to have children. And
Well, it's having a family, you know, just generally having a family. I don't, you know, it's not the same. It's not the same kind of thing, you know. Having, you know, men. Yeah, I wanted to have kids. You know, I definitely wanted to have kids, but not the same way that a woman wants to have kids.
Of course, yeah.
My wife. There's no way. My wife can sit there all day and play with our grandkids, and I'm like, gosh, there's no way I could do that. There's absolutely no way.
Yes.
She reads to him.
Yeah,
she reads the
very
same book like
something-
5 times, and I'm like, no way. There's just no way I could do this. You know, and she's, I mean, tirelessly.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and it's like I'm tired of hearing the book 4 or 5 times. You know, it's like I'm kidding. I don't really care. I don't pay that much attention to it, but it's like, man, I can't believe she can do this. You know, and to me, that's incredible. You know, that's not something.
No,
God, how brain dead can you be to do something like that? No, it's incredible to me.
And it's very unique. Yeah,
You
to
know,
women specifically. Yeah.
And it's like that you know, being able to do that and really, I hear women get together and they talk about their kids and different things that their kids are doing or how they're acting or whatever. You know, I've never in my life seen a woman come running across the room when her kid, or a man, I mean, seen a man run across the room when his kid falls, scoop him up, and, you know, ready to do whatever's necessary to you know, appease, you know, I don't know what word to use, but just, I mean, if they had to cut their arm off in order to do it, no problem.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but as a guy, it's like, I'll be fine.
Sometimes it's like, don't.
Yes.
Just chill. Just chill.
Yeah.
They'll be okay.
But they're different. I mean, for goodness sake, I mean, they're different. And but I'll tell you, you know, I've been single and I've been married. I've been without kids and I've been with kids, and I don't care what anybody says. It's better to be married and have kids.
Yeah.
I just hands down. If you're gonna live a godly life, if you're not, don't get married and don't have kids. You know,
Please
don't reproduce. Just die by yourself. You know, we don't need any more of you. There's lots of people like you on the earth that are just lost and desperately in need of help. But if you're going to live for God, you know, and anybody who's listening and you're, oh, that's a nice thing to say. Well, you know, come to church and live for God. We'll be glad to help. You know, you don't have to live that kind of crazy life. It's not. But it's true. It's the way it is. You're living a godless existence. You don't want to bring kids into it. You don't want to bring, you know, partners into it. You just do it by yourself, you know, in a corner somewhere alone, you know, because you're not doing yourself any favors, and pulling other people into it's just making life miserable for them as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll skip work and rest. We'll save that because for time's sake we're on. We have 7 minutes.
Well, work is funny because we had that thing last night.
Last night, yeah.
And you know, work is, you know, we need to be industrious.
Yeah.
You know, we need to be industrious.
But
it doesn't matter what. It really doesn't matter what.
Okay, but more going down the road, you know, we're talking about, you know, because in the context of so many people trying to figure out their career path, you know what I mean? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? What type of work am I supposed to do?
Well, I have my own personal opinion about it. there's, the Bible doesn't give us any clarity that, you should follow some particular path or vocation or
Men are
something like
supposed to
that.
be gardeners.
It's the
Apparently.
purpose of God for their lives. We need to find out what
Yeah.
God wants for us at an individual level. That's why it's not in the Bible, because it's an individual thing that we find. I remember the movie Chariots of Fire. It's a million years old, and probably nobody even knows what I'm talking about. But it was about a guy named Eric Liddell, who was a Christian, who was a very very Scottish runner. He was a crazy. And he said, "When I run, I feel God's pleasure." But the problem is that they were having the meets on Sunday, and he said, "I'm not going to run on Sunday." And so he had to work it out. He couldn't run the actual events that he wanted to run. He had to run these other events in order to be able to run and still be able to honor God on Sunday. But then, which is the rest of the story, is that he gave it all. He gave it all in and went to, I believe it was China, and ended up getting arrested and put in a prison camp and died in the prison camp for preaching the gospel. That's why that happened. Oh, what a waste. No, it was destiny. That was the purpose he found the purpose of God for his life. Even though he had those other things, he found the purpose of God for his life. And that, I think, is the thing, is you need to find the purpose of God for your life at an individual level, and career will be secondary to that. So either your career will feed into that calling, or it will be that calling. But when you're talking about it being that calling, it needs to have eternal significance. Nobody's called to make the next iPhone.
Yeah.
It's not like that. It's not a calling from God to, make gadgets. It's like I said in the beginning, it's training. We're training for eternity. And iPhones aren't going to be exciting in heaven.
Yeah. Okay, so rest.
You need to sleep. You need to sleep. You need to sleep. You need to get. I know people they boast about only getting 4 and 5 hours of sleep. It's like, okay, fine. Good for you if you can. If you're not just boasting, and really the truth of the matter is you're rotting from the inside out, because you're using caffeine and energy drinks and various supplements and formulas and things like that to keep yourself going.
Yeah.
But you need to sleep. There's so much research that's been done on the idea of sleeping, and especially and of course, because there's sleep therapists, sleep professionals, these doctors and they say, why people are dying? Because they're not getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
And there is a truth in that. You need rest. It's when you're working out, your rest in between workouts is more important than the workouts themselves. Because if you just work out every day, you're beating yourself to death, and it's diminishing returns.
Diminishing returns. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and again, important to note.
So,
rest was obviously established by God.
Well, yeah. I mean,
that made
and
the
God doesn't
idea.
need rest, but He says the seventh day is rest. But it's like what Jesus said: is man was not made for the Sabbath; Sabbath was made for man. And so that whole idea is that the opportunity is there to find rest, and it is very interesting. I'm plagued with a OCD disposition that once I get locked onto something, I can't unlock real easily. And but what I've learned is there have been times where I am beating at something and I'm not getting anywhere, and only because of discipline is I look at the clock and I say bedtime, and I'm wired. I'm going 90 miles an hour and it's bedtime, so I pull the plug, and I go to bed and finally, fall asleep. And then I go at whatever I was working at the night before, and all of a sudden I know what to do, and it's like, just having a fresh, head sometimes is all that's required to be able to, get something done. And you think, oh no, I got to do this. I got to do it now. Sleep, get some sleep. And then you get up the next morning and you've got more more time to have thought about things. I mean, the number of times that I'm doing something else, or maybe not doing a lot of anything, and then all of a sudden I'll go, that's the answer for this thing over here that I've been working on.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's definitely, sleep is definitely important.
Yeah, there's actually tons of great research on that. Okay, so finally, and we I think we're good to make it.
Well, I purposely
Governments
kept
shorten
mine
them, yeah.
short.
Governments and authority, or specific.
Well,
to
authority, yeah, authority.
Yeah.
I think
So just quickly, because you mentioned this about the importance of having somebody else tell you what to do, and that's obvious when you're young. But even as you're older, you still have times you need somebody who has the authority to say something.
Yeah, well, there's a principle in the Bible. We've been talking about it a lot here lately in church. Is the idea, and it's for me, over the years of pastoring, it's always people who have a problem with authority, they're spiritual midgets. They never grow. They're like spiritual pygmies. They don't. They think. They think that they're really got it going on and they're really smart, but I'm looking at it as their pastor and thinking they're never going to go anywhere. It's just never going to be anything, because they haven't even got a good foundation, let alone intelligence. They don't even have a good foundation for intelligence. I mean, spiritual intelligence, not just knowledge in general. And it's tragic, because they don't even have the foundation for it, and so because they're anti-authority, no, I gotta, I've got to drive, it's always the case. You give me information if you want, you can tell me where to go, but I got to drive. And and it's like, okay, you don't know how to drive, that's the problem, but they're just not open to that idea, it's like, no, I can drive. And so you have there's a real necessity to being under authority in order to be able to have authority. And that's so critical to understand, is that you don't have any authority if you're not under authority. And so people that want to hop around, go to other churches, they get, bug up their butt about something and they want to leave. Oh, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go to another church. So they leave and go to another church. Well, it's because they have a problem with authority. Yeah. That's the bottom line. It's like, nobody's going to tell me what to do. Nobody's going to treat me this way. Nobody's going to be like this. Nobody's going to be like that. And it's okay, fine. But you're not going to grow. You're not going to learn anything. You're not going to mature. You're certainly not going to, be called upon to lead anything.
Yeah.
It's funny how usually people like that usually have these jobs where they just sit in a back room somewhere and, tinker with widgets, and nobody has anything to do with them, they love it, but they're not doing anything. There's nothing important. They're just, they're just busy work.
Well, that's it. Keys to finding your role. I think that it's kind of like I'm trying to figure out how to it's not really a question, but it's more of a statement. I noticed that it's outside of having some kind of clear direction, literally from God. It really is just a flip of the coin. I mean, you go one direction, you can go this direction, you can go that direction, but it's like, why go those directions? What's the ultimate goal? Like I said today, I think there's a very common thought in specifically in college age students that are college age people that are thinking about their careers and stuff like that. It's like, well, whatever I do, I need to make money.
Yeah.
That's the goal, just make a lot of money. But it's interesting because there's not really a lot of that industrious spirit, I guess. And I'm curious as to why. Why has that become a thing where we don't necessarily have? Is it because there's just not a ton of stuff to invent anymore? If there's, there's not another moon to travel to. What's the thing driving that?
Yeah, there's nothing to build anymore.
We've built it all.
We've built it all. Like heaven. The guy, I think was in the 1800s, wanted to close the patent office. He said, there's nothing else going to be patented.
At the start of the genuine turn of the century in the modern era. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, very cool. That was we're slightly over time, but appreciate the couple of comments that or the answers that came in. Yeah, encourage you guys to join us next week. We'll be here again for episode 203, and more. We'll be doing another resolving identity crisis topic. I don't know how much further we'll go after that. But I appreciate you guys joining, and we really do encourage you to join us next week. Invite folks, send folks the link, and if you have questions after the fact, feel free to use the comment section. We do get the notifications for comments, and but more than anything else, we do encourage you, if you're in the local area, join us tomorrow night for our midweek service. We'd love to meet you in person, especially if you've never been, and for those of you that have been, we welcome you back, and we look forward to seeing you guys again next week.